Martha Johnson stood by the window, watching as the evening sunlight filtered through the curtains, bathing the room in a golden glow. She clutched a warm coffee cup in her wrinkled hands and let out a deep sigh. Since losing her husband John to a heart attack 5 years ago, this big house sometimes felt a bit lonely. However, thanks to her daughter Amy living with her, Martha's days were filled with smiles and conversation. Having worked at Westside Insurance Company for over 30 years, Martha had earned a managerial position through her years of service. Colleagues regarded her as someone they could rely on, and her accurate judgment and warm personality were highly valued by clients as well. "Which outfit do you think is better for the interview?" Amy had entered the living room, holding up a dress in each hand. She worked as an administrative staff member at the local university but had recently been considered for a promotion and was preparing for an interview. "The navy blue one on the left brings out the color of your eyes," Martha replied with a smile. Amy resembled her mother, with gentle brown eyes and a soft expression. However, her personality reflected her father's meticulousness and sincerity. At the university, she was trusted as a confidant for students, and there was always a line of students waiting to speak with her at her desk. "Thanks. Oh, you mentioned Aunt Linda called. What did she want?" Amy asked as she placed the dresses on the sofa. Martha's expression clouded slightly. Her relationship with Linda was complicated, tangled with complex emotions. "Linda's engaged. To a real estate agent named Charles." Again. Amy couldn't hide her surprise. Linda had been married twice before and divorced twice. In her first marriage, she had a daughter named Jessica, but divorced due to her husband's infidelity. Her second marriage lasted barely 3 years before ending due to financial disagreements. This time seems different. Charles is a successful real estate agent with properties across California. Linda sounded truly happy, Martha said, though there was a hint of concern in her voice. Linda had always been a vibrant presence who enjoyed being the center of attention. Since childhood, she disliked being in Martha's shadow and often felt competitive. Martha knew that Linda had harbored complicated feelings toward Amy since she was young. Having experienced a difficult childhood herself and struggling as a single mother, Linda envied Amy's stable life while sometimes unfairly criticizing her in comparison to her own daughter, Jessica. "There's going to be an engagement party next Saturday in the ballroom at the Grand Hotel. Sounds like it'll be one of her typical lavish parties," Amy chuckled. "Charles wants to meet us. He sounded like quite a gentleman on the phone," Martha said. Indeed, Charles had been very kind to Martha and Amy on the phone, showing particular interest in Amy, saying he had heard a lot about her from Linda. "Will Jessica be there?" Amy asked. Martha nodded. "Yes, she's been invited too." Amy and Linda's daughter Jessica had built a close relationship like sisters. Despite growing up in a complicated environment as a single mother's daughter, Jessica had a bright and positive personality. She currently worked in the fashion industry and maintained a good relationship with her mother Linda while keeping a certain distance. "It'll be nice to see her again," Amy said cheerfully. "But Aunt Linda's engagement party?" There was a slight tension in her voice. Martha placed her hand on her daughter's shoulder. "It'll be fine. We should be able to get through this without any issues." However, Martha felt a vague uneasiness swirling inside her. Events involving Linda always seemed to take unexpected turns. Especially this time, an engagement party that could significantly change her life. Martha silently prayed that everything would go smoothly as she began preparing for the weekend. The crystal ballroom at the Grand Hotel was bathed in the light of chandeliers, with elegant music playing in the background. Martha and Amy paused at the entrance, momentarily taking in the splendor of the venue. Dozens of guests had already gathered on the marble floor, chatting with champagne glasses in hand. "That's Linda for you," Martha said quietly. "She's always loved extravagance." Amy, dressed in a crimson gown, nodded nervously. She wasn't comfortable in such social settings, but she was determined to do her best for her mother's sake and to celebrate Linda's engagement. Amy. A bright voice made them turn around. Jessica approached them at a light run, wearing an emerald green dress. It's been so long. The two embraced. What a lovely color on you. The three entered the venue, looking for Linda and Charles. They were standing in the center of the room, greeting guests as they arrived. Linda wore a white and gold dress with a large diamond necklace gleaming at her throat. That's the engagement gift necklace from Mom, Jessica whispered. 3-carat diamond. Charles seemed serious. As Martha and Amy approached Linda and Charles, Linda gave them a radiant smile. Martha. Amy. You came. She gave them both light hugs. This is my fiancé, Charles. Charles Burns was a tall, elegant man in his 60s. His silver hair was well-groomed, and he wore an expensive tuxedo. He took Martha's and Amy's hands in turn, shaking them politely. It's an honor to finally meet you. Linda has told me what a wonderful family you are. Charles's voice was warm and friendly. Especially you, Amy. I've heard about your work from Linda. It's wonderful how you help young students. Amy smiled and responded politely. There was something inscrutable in Charles's gaze, but his manner remained consistently friendly. The party progressed smoothly, with Martha and Amy visiting several tables and enjoying conversations with Linda's friends and acquaintances. Many of Charles's colleagues were also in attendance, all praising his work ethic and character. Linda is a fortunate woman, one real estate agent told Martha. Charles is one of the most successful men in the industry. It seemed like a perfect evening, until a sudden incident changed everything. Linda suddenly raised her voice in the center of the room. Wait! My necklace is gone. Her voice was mixed with fear and surprise. The surrounding conversation stopped, and all eyes turned to Linda. I was wearing it just now. Has anyone seen it? Linda cried out in panic while feeling around her neck. Charles rushed to her side, trying to respond calmly, but Linda couldn't be calmed. It's a 3-carat diamond. I wonder if it fell somewhere. She looked around the floor. As guests began helping to search the area, Linda's expression suddenly changed. Her eyes turned toward Amy, and suspicion appeared in them. Amy, when were you near me last? Linda's voice was cold and sharp. Amy's eyes widened in surprise. Huh? About 15 minutes ago, when I went to get champagne, we talked briefly. I see. Linda's voice was low and had a dangerous edge to it. You were looking at my necklace the whole time. Linda. Martha sternly cut off her sister. What are you saying? But Linda wouldn't listen. She took several steps toward Amy and raised her voice. Admit it. You stole my necklace. A shock ran through the room. Amy's face turned pale as she stepped back. What are you saying, Aunt? I didn't steal anything. Don't lie. Linda's voice grew louder. You've always wanted what was mine. Since you were a child. Now you can't stand my happiness, can you? Martha stepped in front of Amy. Linda, calm down. Amy would never do such a thing. You always take her side. Tears welled up in Linda's eyes. Always perfect Amy, model student Amy. She grew up in a much more privileged environment than my Jessica, and now she wants to take away my happiness too. Jessica pulled at her mother's arm with a confused expression. Calm down. We'll find it if we all look together. But Linda's anger couldn't be contained. She looked around at the surprised faces of the guests and raised her voice even more. You can't stand that I'm happy. Are you upset that Charles chose me? Amy answered with trembling lips. That's not true. I really didn't steal anything. Liar. At that moment, Linda forcefully poured the red wine she was holding over Amy's head. The deep red liquid trickled down Amy's hair and stained her beautiful dress. Amy was so shocked she couldn't speak, standing frozen in place. The venue fell into complete silence. Martha cried out, "Linda," and rushed to her daughter. Tears welled up in Amy's eyes, mixing with the red wine as they streamed down her cheeks. "No evidence," Linda said coldly. "Let's check." She rushed to Amy's table and grabbed her handbag. Before Amy could cry, "Stop," Linda roughly dumped the contents of the bag onto the floor. Cosmetics, wallet, smartphone, key ring, and a glittering diamond necklace scattered across the floor. The air in the room froze. The color drained from Amy's face, and she was left speechless. Martha also stood stunned, looking at the necklace on the floor with disbelief. "See?" Linda said in a triumphant voice. "I was right." Charles calmly picked up the necklace from the floor and handed it to Linda. His expression revealed complex emotions, but Linda didn't notice, looking down at Amy with a victorious expression. "Amy." Martha spoke to her daughter in a confused voice, but Amy couldn't say anything. With wine-soaked hair and a ruined dress, Amy made her way to the exit on shaking legs. No one stopped her, except Jessica, who followed after her with a perplexed expression. Martha, left behind, gave Linda a severe look. Her heart was torn between concern for her daughter and anger at her sister's actions. Martha opened the apartment door and quietly headed to Amy's room. Her daughter's crying could be heard all the way down the hallway. After knocking, Martha gently opened the door. "Amy, are you okay?" Amy was lying on the bed, staring at the ceiling with red, swollen eyes. The wine-stained dress had been discarded and lay crumpled in a corner of the room. "Why did this happen?" Amy whispered in a hoarse voice. "Mom, believe me. I didn't steal anything." Martha sat on the edge of the bed and took her daughter's hand. Her heart was confused, torn between the evidence that had emerged before her eyes and her daughter's desperate plea. "I know. You're not that kind of person," Martha said, but even her own voice lacked conviction. "But the necklace came out of your bag. How?" Amy sat up and wiped the tears from her eyes. "I don't know. I never touched it. Someone must have put it there." "Who?" "I don't know." Amy's shoulders slumped. "I can't remember doing anything to make Aunt Linda resent me." Martha sighed deeply. The faces of people who had been present flashed through her mind one after another. Linda's triumphant expression, Jessica's confusion, and Charles's subtle reaction. "Get some rest now," Martha kissed Amy's forehead. "We'll talk calmly tomorrow." The next morning, Martha was awakened by the doorbell. Looking at the clock, it was only 8 a.m. Rushing from the bedroom to the door, Martha called out, "Who is it?" "It's Sophia." When Martha opened the door, Amy's best friend Sophia Clark was standing there. "I heard about last night," Sophia said with a worried expression. "Is Amy okay?" "She's sleeping," Martha answered with a tired expression. "Would you like some coffee?" While making coffee in the kitchen, Martha told Sophia everything about the previous night's events. "I can't believe it," Sophia frowned. "There's absolutely no way Amy would do something like that." "I know, but the evidence." "Evidence?" Sophia raised an eyebrow. "You have to believe what Amy is saying." "I want to believe her," Martha said painfully. "But how did that necklace get into Amy's bag?" "Good morning." The two turned around and noticed Amy standing at the kitchen door. She looked pale, with fatigue circles under her eyes. "Amy." Sophia rushed over and hugged her friend. "Are you okay? After being treated so terribly?" Amy smiled faintly. Thanks for coming." The three sat at the table and discussed the situation over coffee. "Actually, I noticed something concerning at last night's party," Sophia said with a serious expression. "I saw that Charles person lurking around Amy's coat and bag several times." "What?" Amy and Martha exclaimed simultaneously. While Linda was making her rounds greeting people, Charles would occasionally be alone, going back and forth to the coat rack area. "I thought it was strange, but I never imagined." Suspicion began to grow in Martha's heart. Charles. But why would he do something like that? Amy was confused. "I don't know. But someone definitely put that necklace in your bag," Sophia asserted. That afternoon, Martha contacted Jessica. Linda's daughter was shocked by the previous night's events but was more concerned about Amy. "Aunt, let me know if there's anything I can do to help," Jessica said as soon as she arrived at Martha's apartment. "I don't believe Amy stole it." "Jessica, do you know anything about Charles?" Martha asked directly. "Charles?" Jessica thought for a moment. "He's only been with Mom for about 6 months. He's always polite and very kind to Mom. But he seems a bit calculating. He was particularly interested in family matters. He wanted to know details about me, Amy, and even you." The three began researching Charles Burns online. His company did exist and was indeed successful. However, as they continued their investigation, strange facts emerged. "Look," Sophia pointed at the laptop screen. "Here's a social media page from 2 years ago. It seems Charles was engaged to another woman." "Really?" Martha peered at the screen. "Catherine Dawson. And look at this post." Sophia opened another page. "Sad news. My engagement to Charles has been called off due to various circumstances, and a few weeks before that, it seems there was trouble between her and her family." That's not all. Jessica found something on her smartphone. 5 years ago, there was another engagement to a woman named Sarah Foster. This one was also called off. Martha and Amy exchanged glances. "We need to investigate Charles's past engagements more." Jessica tracked down contact information and discovered a startling fact. Charles had at least 3 broken engagements, and in each case, trouble arose with the fiancé's family before the breakup. "We need to know more about him," Martha resolved. "Jessica, keep this secret from Linda. She wouldn't believe us right now." Jessica nodded. "I understand. But I'm worried about Mom." That night, Sophia brought more information. Using her newspaper connections, she had found the contact information for one of Charles's former fiancées, Catherine Dawson. "We might be able to talk to her," Sophia said excitedly. The next day, Martha and Amy called Catherine. At first, she was cautious, but as she heard their situation, her attitude softened. "Charles." Catherine sighed on the other end of the phone. "My engagement to him ended terribly. He made my niece steal valuables." "What?" Martha gasped. "Yes. My jewelry, not the engagement ring, but a family heirloom ring, suddenly disappeared. Charles began to suspect my niece, and when he searched her room, the ring was found there. And then my niece cried and insisted she hadn't stolen it. But the evidence was clear." Catherine's voice darkened. "The family was divided, and I couldn't believe my niece. I took Charles's side. A week later, he broke off the engagement, because I couldn't value family bonds." "But did your niece really steal it?" Amy asked. "No. Later, security camera footage revealed the truth. On the day Charles visited my house, he was seen entering my niece's room alone. He must have hidden the ring there." After hanging up, Martha, Amy, and Sophia sat at the kitchen table, silently contemplating. He's doing the same thing, Martha finally spoke. He's using Amy to test his relationship with Linda. But why? Amy was confused. Remember his words, Sophia said. Couldn't value family bonds. He might be testing his partners. Seeing how they react when family faces a crisis. And Linda failed that test, Martha said bitterly. She chose her fiancé over family. But we still don't have enough evidence, Amy pointed out realistically. Linda won't believe us if we talk to her. You're right, Martha stood up. That's why we need to find conclusive evidence. Martha stood at Linda's front door, taking a deep breath. This would be the first time talking to her sister since the engagement party. When she knocked, Linda immediately came to the door. She looked slightly surprised to see Martha, but her expression quickly changed to a cold gaze. What do you want? Linda's voice was hard. We need to talk, Martha said calmly. Can I come in? Linda hesitated but eventually stepped aside to let Martha into her home. The living room was piled with wedding preparation catalogs and magazines. I want to talk about Charles, Martha began. That again. Linda made no effort to hide her irritation. Have you come to make excuses for Amy? Linda, please listen, Martha looked directly into her sister's eyes. Charles has a history of 3 broken engagements. And before each breakup, there was always trouble with the fiancé's family. What are you saying? Linda frowned. Charles has told me everything. His past engagements ended because the other person couldn't understand him. I understand you want to believe that, Martha chose her words carefully. But he put the necklace in Amy's bag. To drive a wedge between you and us. Linda shook her head vigorously. That's ridiculous. Why would he do such a thing? He's testing you. He wanted to see whether you would choose family or fiancé when faced with a crisis. Nonsense. Linda stood up. Get out. Making up such stories to justify Amy's mistake. Martha stood up with a resigned expression. I'm gathering evidence, Linda. I'll show you when I find it. There's still time before the wedding. The initial phone call to the hotel was unsuccessful. The security department's manager firmly refused, saying, we cannot disclose surveillance camera footage without a legal warrant. But Martha didn't give up. She managed to meet with the hotel manager directly and explain the situation. My daughter has been falsely accused of theft, Martha pleaded. Couldn't you allow us to check the footage from the party day, just to reveal the truth? The hotel manager, Raymond Clark, was an experienced man in his 50s. He listened to Martha's story and showed a sympathetic expression. It's legally difficult, but... Raymond thought for a moment, then lowered his voice. I have a daughter too. I understand how you feel. I'll talk to Jim, our security manager. Meanwhile, Amy and Sophia were digging deeper into Charles's background. Using Sophia's newspaper connections, they managed to track down one of Charles's former employees. Elena Rodriguez had worked as Charles's housekeeper for 3 years. She agreed to meet Amy and Sophia at a cafe, though she was clearly nervous. You said you wanted to know about Charles Burns, Elena said, clutching her coffee cup. He is a special man. In what way? Amy asked. He's a perfectionist. Especially regarding family relationships, Elena looked around before lowering her voice. He always tests the women he's going to marry. In his words, to determine if they're truly family material. Tests. Sophia leaned forward. Yes. He deliberately creates trouble. He causes discord within the fiancé's family and watches to see if the fiancé chooses her family or him, Elena shook her head sadly. I witnessed the same pattern twice while I worked for him. He frames the fiancé's niece, nephew, or sibling and observes the family's reaction. Why would he do such a thing? Amy frowned. His parents divorced when he was a teenager. I heard it was a very ugly separation. Since then, he's been obsessed with what makes a true family, Elena added in a whisper. He used to say, before getting married, I need to know if a woman will choose her family or me when faced with a crisis. Elena agreed to write an affidavit. I don't work for him anymore. I have no reason to fear telling the truth. The next day, Jim Foster, the hotel's security manager, contacted them. I've checked the footage, his voice held surprise. Indeed, before the party began, a man entered the coat room and put something into a woman's bag. Martha's heart raced. And that man? From the angle captured, I can't say with certainty, but based on build and clothing, he looks very similar to the fiancé, Charles Burns. Martha immediately called Amy. We've found evidence. The rehearsal dinner before Linda's wedding was held in a private room at an upscale restaurant. It was a small gathering of just family and close friends, but Martha and Amy hadn't received invitations. Are we going? Amy looked anxiously at her mother. Yes, Martha said with a determined expression. With evidence. When they arrived at the restaurant, dinner had already begun. Linda looked at Martha and Amy with surprise. Charles tensed for a moment but quickly regained his calm smile. Martha, Amy, he approached the two. I'm afraid we hadn't invited you. We need to talk, Martha said calmly. Linda, do you have a moment? Linda stood up with a disgruntled expression and followed Martha and Amy to a corner of the restaurant. What is this about? Tomorrow is my special day, Linda made no effort to hide her irritation. Look at this, Martha took out a tablet. This is footage from the hotel surveillance cameras. The screen showed the coat room before the party began. Charles could clearly be seen checking his surroundings, then reaching into Amy's bag and putting something in it. The color drained from Linda's face. This is. And this too, Martha showed Elena's affidavit. Testimony from Charles's former housekeeper. It details how he has tested his fiancées. Linda was speechless as she read through the document. Her hands began to tremble. I can't believe it. Tears welled up in her eyes. And I treated Amy like that. Linda looked at Amy. For the first time, genuine regret appeared in her eyes. Amy, I'm sorry. Amy hesitantly took Linda's hand. Aunt. Linda returned to the table on shaking legs and stared at Charles. He was smiling as if nothing had happened. Is there a problem? Charles asked calmly. What is this? Linda placed the tablet in front of him. Charles's expression froze momentarily when he saw the screen. But he quickly regained his composure. Linda, I can explain, he said in a low voice. I simply wanted to confirm that you truly loved me. By using my family. By framing my niece as a criminal. True family believes in each other during difficult times, Charles said with a serious expression. Your family crumbled at the first trial. You chose me over your blood relatives. That has significant meaning to me. Linda's expression hardened. That's not a test, it's manipulation. She slowly removed the engagement ring from her left hand and placed it on the table. There will be no wedding. Leave now. Anger flashed across Charles's face for an instant, but he said nothing as he stood up and quietly left the restaurant. Linda approached Amy and took her hand. Can you forgive me? Her voice trembled. Amy hesitated. But seeing the sincere regret in Linda's eyes, she slowly nodded. It might take time, but I'll try. 6 months later, on a Saturday, golden sunset light could be seen through the windows of Martha's apartment. A pleasant aroma wafted from the kitchen, and wine glasses and appetizers were arranged in the living room. The doorbell rang, and Martha opened the door with a smile. Linda stood there with a bouquet of flowers. "Sorry I'm late," Linda said awkwardly. "I got caught up at the florist." "Beautiful flowers. Amy's already here." Entering the living room, Amy was sitting on the sofa sipping wine. She stood up when she saw Linda and smiled a bit stiffly. "How are you?" "I'm fine," Linda handed the bouquet to Amy. "These are for you." Since breaking off her engagement with Charles, Linda had changed significantly. She toned down her flashy clothes and jewelry, adopting a more natural appearance. Most importantly, her attitude had changed. "How's the counseling going?" Martha asked as she poured red wine into 3 glasses. "Surprisingly helpful," Linda answered honestly. "It's painful to confront the jealousy I've harbored for years, but I think it was necessary." She looked at Amy. "Since childhood, I've envied you. Being Martha's daughter, growing up in a perfect home. Jessica and I always felt inadequate." "I had no idea you felt that way," Amy said with a surprised expression. "I always admired you for being free, strong, and forging your own path." Linda laughed with tears in her eyes. "We couldn't see each other clearly, could we?" The 3 women toasted and enjoyed their meal in a warm atmosphere that would have been unimaginable a few months earlier. "By the way, what happened to Charles?" Amy asked, driven by curiosity. Martha and Linda exchanged glances. "He seems to have found his next prey," Linda said calmly. "I heard he's engaged to a wealthy widow in Boston." "Already?" Amy was surprised. "Yes. But apparently, an anonymous letter from an Italian restaurant arrived at her family's home," Martha smiled meaningfully. "Warning them about Charles's true nature." "No way." Linda covered her mouth with her hand. "Did you do that?" Martha merely shrugged. "I heard that engagement was broken off too," Linda added. "And Charles's reputation has fallen in the community." "He deserved it," Amy said, and the 3 nodded in agreement. As the night wore on, the conversation shifted to lighter topics, occasionally blooming into reminiscences of old memories. There was also a video call from Jessica, who was happy about this family reconciliation. "How about another glass of wine?" Martha asked, holding the bottle. "Yes, I'll have some," Linda smiled and held out her glass. Then, jokingly added, "I promise not to pour wine on anyone's head this time." After a moment of silence, all 3 burst into laughter. Their laughter, like a symbol of healing past wounds and forging new bonds, echoed throughout the room. Outside the window, the full moon shone in the night sky. Martha took a sip of wine, etching this moment in her heart. It had been a long journey, but her family was finally healing. And that was worth overcoming any difficulty.